Did you know that Doc Holliday once walked into a saloon already dying from tuberculosis and still managed to outdrink, outshoot, and outtalk men twice his size? The man wasn't just a gunslinger, he was a walking, coughing embodiment of chaos. Today we're talking about 6 of the most infamous firearms to ever grace the Wild West. Let's check them out. See, this wasn't a big showy revolver like you see in the movies, nope. This little 41 rimfire Derringer was a gambler's gun, meant for up close and personal disagreements, if you catch my drift. It had a spur trigger, 2 stacked barrels, and just enough punch to make sure the fella across the poker table learned his manners real quick. Now, why'd Doc have one of these instead of a Colt? Simple. It was easy to hide, and he didn't have time for showdowns. If Doc pulled iron, someone was already too late. But here's where it gets real interesting. This wasn't just any Derringer. This one was a gift from Big Nose Kate herself, Doc's on-again, off-again firecracker of a lady. She had "To Doc from Kate" engraved on the side because nothing says romance like a firearm in the Old West. Now, let's talk about why some folks think this gun might be, cursed. Yeah. When Doc finally bit the dust in 1887, bedridden, broke, and probably ticked off he didn't go out in a gunfight, his precious Derringer just vanished. Some say the bartender at the Hotel Glenwood swiped it as payment for Doc's funeral. Others claim it got passed through a line of shady characters, each adding their own tall tale. The museum in Glenwood Springs eventually bought it for $84,000, thinking they were getting a real piece of history. It's the 1800s, the law was more of a suggestion, and if you were breathing, someone probably wanted to shoot you. That's where the old Colt Navy came in. Chambered in .36 caliber, this is one of the finest percussion revolvers of its time. Reliable? You bet. Accurate? Like a snake striking at high noon. This wasn't just some fancy pistol for show, it was the sidearm of legends. And Doc, well, he wasn't just carrying it around to look pretty. See, Doc Holliday wasn't your average shooter. He was fast, calculated, and had a reputation for settling arguments with lead instead of words. It's said that his skill with the Colt Navy was something to behold. And if you found yourself on the business end of it, well, let's just say you weren't going to be around long enough to regret your poor choices. The design of this beauty is what made it so infamous. An octagonal barrel, a smooth as butter trigger pull, and enough stopping power to make sure your problems stayed on the ground permanently. It wasn't the biggest gun around, but that's what made it so good. It had balance. You could draw it fast, shoot it straight, and reload it quicker than a gambler, making an excuse for losing his last dollar. Wild Bill swore by it, and if it was good enough for him and Holliday, you know it was a real deal. Now, here's where the cursed part comes in. Guns don't usually carry legends, but this one, well, it's been linked to some of the deadliest shootouts in history. From the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral to the backroom duels where only one man walked out. The Colt Navy has seen more action than a saloon on payday. If this gun could talk, it'd tell stories that'd make your hair turn white. Let's not forget, Doc wasn't just some gunslinger, he was a man of style. His Colt Navy wasn't just another pistol, it was a symbol. He carried it with the confidence of a man who knew he could use it better than most. Rumor has it his was a gift passed down from family, making it not just a weapon, but a legacy. Now, if you know anything about the Wild West, you know Doc Holliday wasn't the kind of guy to carry a dud. He was a gambler, a gunslinger, and a man who knew his way around a fight. And one of the guns he is known to have carried was the Colt 1877 Lightning, with a bird head's grip, chambered in .38 caliber. This bad boy had 6 shots, though a wise man would only load 5 because, well, unless you wanted to find out how quickly an accident could happen, you didn't trust that hammer to stay put. This thing would fire if you so much as sneezed on it wrong. Now, the 1877 Lightning was the first commercially successful double-action revolver, which means all you had to do was pull the trigger, and the gun would cock, rotate the cylinder, and fire. Sounds pretty fancy, right? Well, let me tell you, this gun was about as delicate as a politician's ego. The internal parts were, let's just say not built for the long haul, so if you didn't treat it like a newborn baby, you'd end up with a pile of broken metal faster than a saloon clears out when someone yells, "Sheriff!" But here's where it gets real interesting. Doc Holliday's nickel-plated shooter was reported to have been only one of his guns actually involved in the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral. Cowboys testified to Judge Spicer that this was the gun Doc used during the brawl, though I doubt they were in the mood to fact-check while bullets were flying past their heads. This gun came in different barrel lengths, from a snub-nosed 2-inch to a full-size 6-inch barrel. But whether you had the short or long version, one thing was certain. You better keep it in good shape or you'd be throwing rocks instead of lead when trouble came knocking. Now, let's talk about why some folks consider this gun cursed. For starters, if you dropped it, well, You might as well kiss your kneecap goodbye, because this hammer wasn't waiting for permission to send around flying. Then there was the infamous fragility. These guns were notorious for breaking down at the worst possible moments. Imagine drawing down in a duel, only for your revolver to jam. That's a special kind of bad luck right there. Okay, so there's no hard evidence that Doc actually carried one of these beauties, but that don't mean he never did. If you were roaming the frontier making enemies faster than a cheating hand at poker, well, you'd want something fast, reliable, and lethal. And the Winchester 1866, well, it was all that wrapped up in a golden-hued package, hence the name Yellow Boy. Sounds pretty fancy, but this thing was built for grit, not glitz. And this particular model, well, it was a carbine chambered in .44 rimfire. Lightweight, short, and built to ride, literally. This wasn't one of those long rifles you see in Hollywood cowboys that swing over their shoulders. Nope, this one was designed for action, often carried in a scabbard right alongside the horse, high on the neck where it could be grabbed quick. And let's clear up a Hollywood lie while we're here. No one was strapping these things butt first to their saddle like some movie extra. Do that and you'll be picking your gun up off the ground every 5 minutes, right alongside your pride. Let's just say this thing had enough rounds to make an enemy reconsider his life choices. Depending on the barrel, you were looking at 13+1 for the carbine, and a whopping 17 rounds in the full-length rifle. In the days where 6-shooters ruled, well, having that much firepower at your fingertips, that was like bringing a Gatling gun to a bar fight. Now, while Doc might have favored his trusty revolvers for those up-close and personal discussions, a man with his reputation wouldn't turn down a solid repeater. This was a gun made for speed. Lever action, quick to reload thanks to King's patent loading gate, which, by the way, was a game-changer at the time, and smooth enough to help keep your enemies second-guessing. Doc was a man of precision, and if he ever did sling one of these, well, you better believe it was for good reason. When your life expectancy's shorter than a gambler's patience, you don't take chances on unreliable weapons. Now, you ever heard about a gun so wrapped up in chaos you wonder if the thing itself had a vendetta? That's right, we're diving into one of Doc Holliday's supposed scatter guns, the mystery double barrel that might be the same shotgun used to put Tom McClaughry 6 feet under at the OK Corral. Now picture this, Tombstone 1881. The air is thick with dust and tension, and out steps Doc Holliday, a man whose reputation could send chills down a rattlesnake's spine. And what's peeking out from under his long coat? Well, that'd be a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun. Short, mean, and built for business. This wasn't some decorative wall hanger, this was a gun made for close quarters devastation. This particular scatter gun is believed to have a sawed-off stock and barrels, perfect for tucking under a coat and pulling out when words failed and lead took over. If you held one of these, well, you'd know it ain't about finesse, it's about firepower. The short barrel meant spread, and in the tight alleys of Tombstone, well, that was the difference between walking away and getting planted. Rumor has it this piece was traced back to Father Art Downey in 1887, years after that infamous shootout. Now, I don't know about you, but if a gun's got a paper trail that stretches past its last owner's pulse, that's about as cursed as any gun can get. Let's be real. If this shotgun really did fire the blast that sent McClaughry to the hereafter, then it wasn't just a weapon, it was a witness to history. And before you ask, no, Doc didn't go around engraving pretty designs on his guns like some kind of showman. This piece was all business. No engravings, just raw, unforgiving steel. The grip, it was rounded, just like the one we see in the movies. And speaking of movies, if you ever watched Val Kilmer's take on Doc and Tombstone, well, you'll notice that shotgun he carried looks mighty familiar to this one. Now here's where things get real interesting. Folks can't seem to agree on whether Doc's shotgun was a 10 gauge or a 12 gauge. What we do know is that the recoil on either one of those would knock the hat off a man who wasn't ready for it. Some believe it was a 10 gauge because, well, Doc Holliday ain't exactly a go big or go home kind of guy. He was a go big and make sure they don't go home kind of guy. This right here is black powdered 12-bore mule-ear coach gun, better known as a sawed-off shotgun. And let me tell you, this wasn't some fancy delicate piece of hardware, no! This was the kind of thing that turned a bad situation into an even worse one if you were on the wrong end of it. See, back in the day, express guards on stagecoaches, wagons, and trains carried these bad boys to keep the riffraff at bay. But in Doc Holliday's hands, well, it was something else entirely. Picture this, Virgil Earp hands Doc a double-barrel shotgun, possibly a Wells Fargo 10-bore, right before the gunfight at the OK Corral. And Doc, he didn't hesitate. When the dust settled, Tom McClaughry was lying in the street, courtesy of this very piece of iron. The barrels on this thing were about 20 inches long, making it compact, easy to maneuver, and absolutely devastating up close. That front trigger fired the right barrel, and the rear fired the left. Simple, effective, and deadly. Cowboys used to load these with buckshot, double-aught buck to be exact. In fact, each pellet was .33 inches in diameter. That's 9 heavy-hitting projectiles per shot in a 12 gauge. You weren't walking away from that. Wyatt Earp had a name for these things, Street Howitzers, and honestly, that's about as fitting as it gets. This wasn't a gun for a fair fight. This was a great equalizer, the last word in an argument, and the reason folks made sure their wills were in order before stepping foot in a saloon with the wrong company. Now, let's get one thing straight. Doc Holliday was already a legend, a man who could put a bullet where he wanted, whether he was stone sober or 3 drinks deep. But with this shotgun, well, he wasn't just a gunfighter, he was a force in nature. This specific shotgun isn't one of Doc's personal pieces, it's a Belgian-made W. Richards from the 1920s, sporting laminated Damascus steel barrels. It was built like its 1880s predecessors, worked just the same and still packs a punch, but it just ain't the original. Still, it gives you a pretty good idea what Holliday carried when it was time to settle business the frontier way. So is this the most cursed gun in the Wild West? Well, let's just say if you saw Doc Holliday coming your way with one of these, you might as well start making peace with your maker. This was a gun meant for one thing, and it did that one thing pretty well. And if you still don't believe in legends, well, partner, history sure does. But let me know in the comments below. Would you rather carry a revolver in a fight, or are you going full Street Howitzer mode like Doc? Don't forget to like and subscribe, because I promise the next gun we talk about might just have a history even bloodier than this one.